Hi, and welcome to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Norman, your host. We spent a little time in the Mediterranean this week. We went all the way to the Tuscany area, specifically Scardino, and we checked in on the Super Series, the 52 Super Series that's being run in the Mediterranean. The folks from Quantum were lucky enough to win this past weekend and putting them in first place in that Mediterranean Super Series with the finals coming in 3 weeks in Barcelona. We checked in with Quantum icon Doug DeVos from Grand Rapids, and Doug, we talked to him from actually Scardino today, and I think you'll enjoy the conversation. We talked a little bit about the 52 Super Series, the America's Cup, and a whole bunch of stuff just about sailing and what it means to him. And if you're not familiar with Doug's podcast called Believe, you should check it out. And a couple of small tidbits that you might find very interesting. He was actually a backup Big Ten quarterback, but we'll leave that for the interview. We really appreciate Doug spending the time with us, and we'll be back in a second.
Well, a certain nervous tension here on the dock in Scarlino this morning. A new wind direction expected for the big finale. Going to be much more shifty, coming out of the northwest, shifty, tricky, and a breeze range anywhere between 5 and 20 knots perhaps. Big finale. Who's going to win the Royal Cup?
With 2 races to go, everything is possible. Obviously, we will keep an eye on each other, but there are other boats that can potentially win the event.
It's a tricky racing, a really tough lead. Anything can happen out there. Just gotta go and execute your game plan. Hopefully, it's a good one. We see them improving their speed. We know they're going fast. Just gotta keep improving ourselves.
May the best team win. Yeah, the fastest.
So a new wind direction for the big finale, a breeze coming out of the northwest, flatter water, very shifty conditions. And off the start line it's Platoon and Preveza on opposite ends of the line. Platoon on the left, Preveza on the right. Top mark, they are first and second. Quantum in third, unfortunately Sled down the pack. The regatta leaders are in seventh, and it's Platoon go on to win. Quantum racing in second, but with Sled down in eighth through the finish line. The advantage swings to Quantum Racing. So Sled have to fight back in the next race, and they're doing well off the start line up the early part of the beat. They're third and ahead of Quantum Racing. At the top mark, Sled have to do turns and drop way behind their main rivals. They fight back to seventh, but it's Quantum Racing who take the regatta win.
That's a well-earned win, and you have to give high marks to Doug and to the whole squad for it. So it's a good one knowing that I steered the boat in for Charles and we got fourth, and every regatta Doug has steered, we've won. So I think there's something to that DeVos guy. We want to win the battle in Scarlino, but we also want to win the war.
We are disappointed, but at the same time, like we said at the beginning of the season, on a podium in this fleet's a good result. But we kept fighting. We were last at the top mark in the last race, and we fought back to a 6, which saved us second overall. So not a bad event for us.
We play our cards. We decide to sail our own regatta, because if you're just waiting to cover the other boat, you just finish in the back. He is so good on driving the boat. With the better communication also, we come down, everybody come down, and that's make the boat also faster.
So the Royal Cup 52 Super Series Scarlino, final results, Quantum Racing winning on 34 points, Sled are second on 39 points, and Platoon 41 points, tied with Phoenix, but Platoon get third on the countback. And the circuit standings see Quantum Racing on 130 points, Phoenix on 135, and Platoon up to third on 158 points. What a great week here in Tuscany and Scarlino. The turn to Scarlino sees 10 great races, Quantum Racing coming out on top, 7 different boats winning races. The fleet has never been tighter as we head to Barcelona.
We're talking with Quantum President Doug DeVos, who is a world-class sailor. And I'm just going to start the easiest thing. You just won one of the tours on the Super Series at Scarlino, so that's got to be the picture behind me. I think is the guys celebrating.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're now in first place with the last trip to Barcelona. So talk a little bit about the series this summer.
Well, the Super Series is amazing. We've been doing it for 10 years now as a Super Series, and a few years before that when it was the Med Cup. And it's still just one of the most amazing sailing organizations and I'd say families. It's one of the most amazing sailing families because the teams we've been competing against for so many years are similar. There's a few new ones that come in, but you get to know these people and they're your friends and the competition is so high and the races are run well, everything is organized really well, and so we feel very fortunate to come out of these things and with a victory like we did in Scarlino and be able to compete for a season championship. And so it's always a thrill, and it's always so darn hard because everyone's good, and you go from the penthouse to the outhouse and then maybe back to the middle somewhere and feel pretty good about it sometimes because places change all the time and the finishes are close. We finished the last day, 2 races, we finished overlapped, and boats behind us finished overlapped, and you think after all the sailing, how can that happen? But everybody's just amazingly close.
What do you like about the boat other than it's faster than it's fast?
Well, what I love about the boat, I love the speed characteristics of it. I love the way you have to work it. That weight matters. Everyone's moving. Everyone's thinking about it. Trimming the sails matters, because if you're just a little out of balance, you're going to go slow. So you have, you're always talking about, speed team is always talking about how the boat's performing, how things are going, how it's balanced. And when it's out of balance, you can feel it. But the solution is not always easy. So there's always a lot of talking, a lot of experimentation, trying to make the thing go fast. That every maneuver matters, and everyone's involved in every maneuver. So it's like a choreography. So it's like a football team. It's like it's kind of half football team, half ballet, half symphony orchestra, because everybody has a role to play, and they you have to work the boat in order to be fast. And so that's the other thing I like it, because it really is about teamwork. It's about coaching, after the day of sailing and looking at it and trying to figure it out, and all those things. So that's what I love about it. And I realized that I just did half and half. So I added it up to like 1.5 rather than a third in my illustration, but we'll let that go.
Now, 52s are a California fleet that eventually migrated to the Mediterranean, but now there's a pretty good 52 fleet here in the Great Lakes, of which you're a part. Compare that. Can you even compare the two fleets, or is it apples and oranges?
Well, no, I think it's very comparable. I think the 52 Super Series, in the Med is really, is truly an open class, where the 52s that we're sailing in the Great Lakes, we're trying to keep it a little bit more Corinthian, a little bit more gentlemanly, a little bit more, if you will, with a budget as a higher priority, and just have fun sailing boats together. So the 52s, you race boat for boat in the Med Cup, where in the Great Lakes we all have a rating. So there's a few things that are different there. We're trying to do more offshore stuff in the Great Lakes. So the MAC races, the Queen's Cup, et cetera, those things are still important, where we haven't done a distance race at all in the Med Cup for many years now. So they're very comparable because, again, there's a lot of great sailers. The competition's really close. And for whatever reason, every mark round, even when there was only 3 of us, we did one regatta, there's only 3 of us this spring, and we all end up at the top mark together. It's like, out of the whole lake, do we really all have to be in the exact same spot? But that's that's how it goes. So, rounding the marks and, your entry and your exit into every maneuver matters. And so it's a really good level of competition. So it's very comparable, but there are some distinct differences.
You remember the New York Yacht Club, and about a year and a half ago, Gary Jobson made the comment that if the America's Cup comes back, as you're also part of the 21 America's Cup syndicate as part of that process, Gary had mentioned that New York might consider going back to monohulls, and certainly the 52 is the first boat that came to mind. Now that turned out to be just a public statement; it never went anywhere. But as a foiler and as a monohull kind of guy, what's your favorite?
Well, the beauty of our sport is that you can do everything. I always would say that to people. You got, you sail around the world, you sail in your inland lake, you got big boats, small boats, you got all sorts of differences. I'm personally, partial to, to displacement boats, monohulls, because that's been my life and experience. The foiling thing is unbelievable. To be on, I had a chance to sail on American Magic a couple of times, and to just see what that boat does, it blows my mind. But it's a whole other world for me, right? So it has a place in our sport for sure, absolutely. And again, our sport can adapt. We can take in new technology. We can create these classes. We can do these sorts of things, and advance the sport without losing the history. So you still have classic yacht racing, and you got mega yacht racing, and you've got everything, because our sport really attracts all those sorts of elements, and makes it fun for everybody wherever you come at it. Whatever you like personally, there's a spot for you.
I had a chance in Chicago to get on one of the boats and go, I don't know, 45 or 50 miles an hour with the Denmark team. And I'm a cruiser, but oh my gosh. And you got almost have to be an aeronautical engineer to figure out what they're doing, because it's not sailing the way you and I would think about it at all.
Exactly. It's a completely different world, and for somebody of my generation age, getting in a wetsuit, getting cold, all of that's like, I'd rather kind of be on something else. But when you see what the next generation's doing and what they're doing with foiling and how they're sailing and racing and taking it to the next level. And you're right, when you get on a platform that's going that fast, it is an amazing element in our sport, and really cool.
Obviously, you grew up in Grand Rapids, but where did you start? Did your father sail? The family sailing? Are you the first in your family?
No, I grew up. My dad was he always wanted to have a sailboat. The story goes back before that. Shortly after World War II, my dad and his business partner started an aviation school teaching people how to fly, and we always joke about it because neither one of them knew how to fly, but that's what they did. That they wanted to be in business, and then they did that for a while. Then they wanted to sail to South America. And so they sold that business, and they traded a plane for a boat, and they started to sail down the east coast of the US, and they made it all the way to Cuba before they sank. So the boat sank, they got rescued, they continued on their trip to South America. It's kind of a legendary thing in our family. But he always loved the idea of being on a boat. And so we started family cruising. And then my oldest brother, Dick, said, hey, let's, as he got a little older, said, let's try to race it. And so I had two older brothers, Dick, Dan, and then my father. And so, I was, I just, all I ever wanted to do was just sail with my dad and my brothers. I have a sister as well. And so she started sailing with us too. So it became a completely family thing for us. And so that's the history that I have, and that's how I got into it, and I just couldn't get away from it. So I'm still doing it. One of my brothers gave it up and kind of left it to me, and the other brother's still tagging around a little bit, but I'm still the one that's gotten really, really deep and can't figure out how to do anything else.
You spend much time in small boats as a younger guy?
I grew up on the family cruiser. It was a Columbia 50. Okay. And that's what we stayed on. That's what we cruised on. And that's, and then we had a Swan 48 after that. So it was always a bigger boat. that we had and sailed, and to do my first Queen's Cup, gosh, I can still remember that, or the first Mackinac race. I was 13 years old. I was so excited to be able to, to go on that with my dad, my brothers, and and the rest of the crew. And it was just an unbelievable experience. And so, I got the bug, and like I said, it's got me.
Having grown up on the Great Lakes, maybe is it to explain what it's like to learn in like Michigan and obviously sail the big oceans. They're really not similar in the way you sail.
No, I mean, there's certain common elements, but the weather patterns are different, the wave patterns are different, everything about the sailing. You would think it would, that there really wouldn't be any differences. It's water, it's wind, but it does make you think a little differently about currents and tides, and the weather patterns are just very very much bigger, right? Because it impacts the entire region. So I think, in my mind, I think of them as very, as very different. While you got to recognize it's still water, it's still wind. The same principles apply, but then again, any geography is going to be a little bit different, and you just got to get used to it. Again, the beauty of our sport, you can do it anywhere.
The part of the show, we've interviewed an awful lot of folks. No, and I get that. A lot of the guys that we've got on the show, there's owners, drivers. You're one of those owner driver kind of guys. But it's amazing that folks, even your competitors, who say how good a driver you are in terms of the quality of your ability to be a sailor. And I say that with not, you're sailing the company of some pretty good guys.
Yeah.
And they have the greatest respect for your talents as a sailor, which I think is kind of cool. Just, it kind of goes away from the idea it's a rich man's sport and it's just something to play around. This is a real deal for you. I mean, you're a competitively international level sailor.
Well, like anything, when you're passionate about something, you spend your time and effort to get better at it. And I've been able to do this a long time, thankfully. And so hopefully I've learned a few things over the years about how to sail and how to keep the boat going fast. And but again, like anything, I love the element being part of a team. We talked about other sports earlier, and being part of a team is just the best thing, because everybody plays a role in making the boat go fast and being successful.
Kind of, let me interject here then. You obviously go to Purdue. What was your degree in Purdue in?
I went to the management school, the Krannert School of Business Management there.
Okay. So you pretty much knew growing up you wanted to be part of the Amway organization, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I always wanted to be part of Amway. Absolutely. My whole, growing up in the business, seeing what it was, and meeting the people who were part of it, and having a chance to, experience, business and entrepreneurship in different ways in different parts of the world. It continues to fascinate me. It's an amazing business, and I've been honored to be part of it my whole life.
When people in the sailing world know that you were a backup quarterback at Purdue as a walk-on when you were in school. Now, I don't think many.
I don't think, man, it doesn't matter to probably most of the people on the water. All they're thinking about is how to beat us, right?
Well,
and how to race together.
I say that because there's a lot of quarterbacks that have gone into business, and you've been very involved in the entrepreneurial world, and both as a volunteer and as part of the training of all kinds of folks in various organizations. I think if you're a quarterback, and again, you're talking to an ex-quarterback as well, we think differently than I think the rest of the world. Did some of that, certainly some of that ability came from your parents and the process that you grew up with, but does sports help that premise and that idea of sort of leadership?
No, I think absolutely, and in any position, just being part of it, And I had a daughter who was part of a dance group, and so I think this was symphony orchestra. When you're part of a team like that, you realize and you recognize the roles and responsibilities that each person plays to be successful, and I think that translates directly into business. It takes so many people to make a business work. Even if you're starting your own business, you're relying on suppliers, you're relying on somebody to help you with something, to build that book of business, whatever it is. I think those characteristics are absolutely directly applicable to business, because you see how everyone adds adds to the whole and makes it work. And so that's, I think having those sorts of experiences have been tremendously helpful.
In facts that don't matter, I looked up some of this discussion stuff. You have the least turnover for your fleet and for your crew on your boat in the Mediterranean series. You've had your crew has stayed together the longest out of other ones. So you don't just preach it, you obviously follow through with the premise as well.
Well, that's what, obviously that's what you try to do. You try to find, recruit and keep, the best people that you can, and then create an environment where, it's attractive to not only go there, but attractive to stay there, and be part of it. And then you start to learn things together, and then, the communications just become much more natural. You just know that this person's going to be there. You know that this is going to happen in this maneuver, and you just know how it's going to work because you've been doing it together for so long. You don't have to think through it or try to talk about it or prepare for it. Everybody knows exactly where to go, how to do it, and you get that feeling. And it's like any team, once that starts to happen, boy, it feels really, really good.
And talk with Matt Cassidy, one of your grinders. Matt's from Harbor Springs, obviously.
Yeah.
And there's 4 guys from Harbor Springs that have been America's Cup guys, and I think that's remarkable for a town that size.
Yeah.
But part of that is when you get a guy like that to be able to go as part of your crew and then go out and to do junior sailing events and those kinds of things. He's got the real big boat experience, but he's also very humble about it. But he also there's a path now to become a professional sailor if that's something that you want, and it's more prevalent today than it was even 15 years ago. I think that's something that goes part of that discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what you want to create is more pathways. Our sport is not, not simple in that regard, but I think Matt's a great example, and the others from Harbor Springs or anywhere. Look, in the lakes, you got an opportunity to be part of something. You can take it where you want to take it. It takes a lot of work. I mean, it just didn't happen for Matt. He worked hard, and the others I know there as well. They worked really, really hard to pursue it. But I think what we want to try to do as a sport is to make those pathways not necessarily easier, because it's, anything's, worth the work to do, but more clear. So your next step, and you have a connection and a contact, and you can demonstrate your skills, and you can have a chance to exhibit your skills and meet people and gain further experience, not only starting where you start, but in different parts of the sport, and then you can make a profession and make a career out of it, in a wonderful way.
They've carried that over into Quantum. Quantum is, I think, the second largest sail distributor in the world.
Yeah,
and I think you've built it on, at least in everything I've talked to, it's certainly service. The guys are taking care of what you need to take care of from a business standpoint. Is the success in the Mediterranean help? Obviously helps, but how much does it help to sell sales when they see that boat coming across the line first?
Well, it obviously is, when you're in second place, competitively in the business of the sport, you're always trying to demonstrate yourself. You're always trying to prove your worth, and that gives you an edge, and it gives you a goal to say, hey, we can compete at the highest levels. And so that's really, that was the whole idea that behind Quantum Racing with Ed Reynolds and with Terry Hutchinson and at the time with Mark Cucci, that we said, hey, we can compete at these levels, and let's go demonstrate it so we can at least start the conversation. Now you have to win the business like any sale. You have to win it. You can't just point somewhere else and say, hey, the boat won, so buy our sales. It doesn't work that way. But you can talk about why the boat won and the service and the value that came along with making the sale, and not only making the sale, but how we sail the sail and how we sail the boat and how we build a team. And so there's a lot of elements that you can use to, so you can compete in the business world of sailing.
How much of Quantum's business acumen comes from Amway?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it comes from all sorts of sources, right? But I think most primarily it comes from Quantum. I think you have to understand the industry. You have to have the history. You have to have the technical knowledge and skills of sail making, of sail design, of the tools that are part of sail design, of sailing the boat, of turning the sails. into the competitive advantage that many sailors are looking for. Or in the cruising side of things, again, a competitive advantage from the way the sails are constructed, the durability, and the other sorts of elements that are going to be important to cruising sailors. So I think there's some business things that cross, but with regard to the product, I think it's a pretty unique product. And product line. So how you make things, and how you like I said, design, build the sails, finish the sails, sell the sails, is very very unique, and I think particular to our industry.
I said this a couple of shows ago. We bought a couple of sails retail offline because we had a budget. We're buying a couple of new sails. We've had a lot of conversations with all kinds of world-class sailmakers on the show, and there's only one company that came out to measure the boat, and it was Quantum. And that's we're actually buying 2 new sails for next year for my O-Day, because we're cruisers.
All right.
And they're the only ones that came out and measured the boat. I thought that was remarkable. And part of it, it had some unique parts to the boat, but they're going to actually cut the sail to fit the boat, not necessarily take the specs off a line somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think that's service.
Service matters, right?
Yeah.
The customer's king. So you got to be walking the docks and meeting, boat owners and the people who are sailing and using this product, and find out what they want. Make sure you get them what they want, what they need. Then all the behind the scenes, how to do it with the right cost, at the right price, with all that sort of stuff. And that's for us to figure. All you want is the right product for your.
Well, and I made mention to the other 2 sail companies that you very well know, and I'm not going to mention them, but I was very clear. I said that you guys came out and measured the boat, and I said, I'm going to tell this story 100 times.
Yeah.
So it becomes word of mouth. It really does.
It does, and this is a personal sport. You do it with friends, like I talked about the Super Series. It's like family. So the people you're with, in the sport, you trust them because they're doing the same thing you're doing. They're using the same vendors or buying the same products or in the same space, and they can give you the best product recommendations. It doesn't have to be online. It can be word of mouth.
And doing some real hard work on looking at demographics for the show and figuring out what we want to do with it, we've come to the conclusion that sailing doesn't get the publicity that it needs. But part of that's the numbers that it is. And sometimes we think, and this is just my personal premise, I'm going to ask the question. Sometimes we think we're bigger than we are. And I say that there's about 2.5 million sailboats in America. Yeah. That being the case, if you judge it against the other recreational pursuits of equal value, those numbers are 60 to 70 million. So my question is this: do we have a real serious understanding of what we do as a sport? And could we be better at our publicity to bring more people? And I say that because everything U.S. Sailing is telling us is that we're shrinking as a sport in terms of numbers.
Well, we have to get better. We have to tell our story. We have to talk about the elements of sailing that are important to somebody who hasn't sailed before, but who would be interested in it. And that's why sometimes when we talked earlier about, you got big boats, small boats, this and that, it's easy for us to disconnect and only talk about our little part of the sport, rather than the bigger ideas. This idea of being in nature and out on the water and with family or friends, and challenging yourself to do things that are kind of hard sometimes. Finding it out. It's a hard sport to do, so we got to find the communications about it so you can share it with people in a way that's compelling and attractive. I think what you're doing, Greg, to get the word out, to talk about this, helps our sailing community tell their story as well, and be strong enough to tell their story, to talk to a friend and express why they're so passionate. Because every club I've ever gone to, and every person I've ever talked to as a sailor, they can't stop talking about the sport because they love it. They're engaged with it, just like you would for a cyclist or a mountain climber or a skier. That's great, but we can be in that sort of category too.
I think one of the things that sailing suffers from is that kids don't have enough sandlot time. And my point to that is that if they're in a small boat, they have to have somebody around them coaching them. Yeah. And when you talk to the like Gary Jepson said, he'd get in Barnegat Bay, and he'd go across and visit friends, and then he'd have lunch and he'd sail back. And the only rule in the house was he had to have his life jacket on, so his mom knew he wasn't going to drown. we don't see a lot of that. And I think if we don't get back to the sandlot aspect of it,
Yeah.
I've used this 100 times. The U.S. ski team used to have 70% gate training and 30% free skiing, and now it's 70% free skiing because the kids are working on the stuff that you're working on from that standpoint. And I think we do a poor job of bringing the kids along because there's not enough of that sandlot stuff. We go to the playground and play with each other, and without adult supervision. Just go do it, enjoy it. Play barnyard basketball, for lack of a term. And we don't do enough of it.
Great observation. And great observation, and it's really important, and for more of us to not make the sport exclusive, but to make it inclusive, and to give more and more kids those opportunities to just go. One of the main reasons for me, young and boating and just in general, is you're free. You got to be on the water all by yourself. Like you said, all you needed was a life jacket and and a boat and some water, and away you went.
Let me talk briefly about the America's Cup. Are you in or out of the America's Cup? And I apologize for not knowing. I should probably know that. You were in for 21, but are you in for 2024?
Oh, we're in. Absolutely. We're in. American Magic, the base in Pensacola is getting established. Patriot is being rebuilt for some of the new rules. So the new sailing systems that are part of the America's Cup for 24. We're modifying Patriot to learn about some of those some of the new sailing systems that are allowed in the rules today. So we'll be going in the water mid-October and starting our sail training with Patriot. The AC40s will come later in the winter, February, March or so. So we'll start sailing those, and absolutely, things are coming together well. We're continuing to build. We felt it was important, like you say, Greg, you're spot on. So many times you come in the America's Cup and you do it one cycle, and we decided, as we were looking at it, towards the, you're kind of getting deep in it in the middle of the 21 Cup. And you go, well, you can't just do this for one cycle. There's so much to learn. And if you just stop after one cycle, you'll just lose all this experience and knowledge that you've built up. And so we're thinking of, from American Magic, we have to build a sports franchise. And it kind of goes back to what you're talking about, communicating and engaging more people in the sport. We have to build a sports franchise. We have to let everybody know we're going to be here, not only for the 24 cycle, but the cycle after that and the cycle after that. We're going to build a team. We're going to, like you talked about quantum, we build a team, and you're going to get to know these people, and you're going to get to see how they develop, how they grow up, and how we bring more people in at this level, so we can continue to expand the sport. And that, we were American Magic. We're going to be very focused, obviously, on the America's Cup, but we want to engage in the broader sailing community. We know that Paul Caird's doing great things with the Olympic team, and so we want to be helpful with that. So we talked to Paul and do that. And through our partnership with the New York Yacht Club, we know that there's lots of different types of sailing, and certainly the youth team and the women's team and the AC40s. So we have a broad vision about building this franchise to be able to be a positive influence and impact on the sport overall. But the drive for winning the America's Cup is, once you do that, you get to have a really outsized influence. Once you win the America's Cup, then you really have a chance to set a few things and to have even greater influence, and we trust in a positive way, because it's not just what we want, it's what the sport wants. So how do we continue to move the sport forward? And so we feel that competing, at the America's Cup level is a great way for us to do that. And so we're really excited about where things are. We got a long way to go, with American Magic. We got a lot of work to do, but it'll be fun to get the boat in the water here in the not too distant future.
Is the Cup still the Holy Grail?
Gosh, I think it is. I mean, you tell me. I think once you get close to it, it's like Lord of the Rings. You just start to go crazy. So, you give me a reality check. It sure seems, like it has the history, it has the legacy, it has the the international aspect, it has the visibility, and so we continue to think that it's worthy of fighting for.
I don't think anybody will ever have 132-year domination as the New York Yacht Club did. I think the world is too competitive. And when you go to the Sail GP world and you see that the guys that are on the American boat, most of them they don't speak. They've got accents.
Yeah.
And when we talked to Paul Caird a couple months ago, that was one of the things that they looked at. They looked at the ski model to figure out that one of the ways to build a program is you have to have the money to build a program before you worry about having the bodies.
Yeah.
So he's looking for endowments that make sense, that they can actually provide programming. And it's not that we're not at that level worldwide. We are not in terms of what we do in terms of trophies and those kinds of things. But we've kind of lost our way a little bit. And I think Paul and that group will take care of it. You guys have done a great job with what you're doing. But I think part of that is having the resources that beyond the financial resources to be able to keep people engaged for a long enough period. I think that's part of that same deal.
Yeah, absolutely. But and Paul also has the experience and the knowledge and to do it. And so instills a great amount of confidence for people to entrust him with financial resources because he's got a long range vision, he's got a plan, he was very thoughtful, meticulous about how to put it together. And so, like I said, we're incredibly supportive, and connecting with him and what he's doing, because you have to develop. While we want to pursue the America's Cup to have influence, you still have to develop the sport,
right,
from the Harbor Springs of the world and from from
right,
all the entry level areas, because that's the future generation. And so you want to kind of match, the pinnacle of the sport, if you will, with an America's Cup, or an Olympics with, hey, you can get there. Yeah, you can get there. This is a pathway, and like we talked about earlier, there might be a pathway for the Olympics, but then it would stop of transitioning to being a professional sailor. So we're trying to connect some of those dots with Paul in that effort as well.
The best answer on this show from anybody we've talked to was the last question I asked Terry Hutchinson. And I simply asked him, I said, what would winning, having been 0 for 5, what would it mean to you? And there was a very long pause, followed by a breath just sort of going out of his body. And he just said, relief. And I thought it was honest to God, it was the best answer of all of the people we've interviewed. It was an amazing answer because it was accurate. And more importantly, it was absolutely from the heart.
Yeah.
And as you watch that interview with him, you realize how single-minded he is. The only thing that's ever been on his plate, according to him, and you can see it, is he wants to win an America's Cup.
Yeah.
And having talked to the captains who've done that, including Connor, because we've had Dennis on early, it still has to be the Holy Grail. It really does.
Yeah. Well, Terry is absolutely from the heart. He's one of those people that you just get a sense of who he is. He has no facade. He's not trying to fake anyone out. Yeah. He is who he is. He's very comfortable in his skin. He's unbelievably good in what he does. He's a great friend, and like you said, that's the best answer because it's just from his heart. It's honest. It's like you work for something. Yeah, we're gonna celebrate just like the background that you have there. But you're gonna breathe a sigh, say, boy, we set a big goal and we worked really hard to achieve it, and if we were able to win it, we'll have a chance to celebrate, but then we'll have a chance to just give a big sigh and go, wow, it happened.
I made the note that money is not everything, but do you sit down in January and as a businessman and say, okay, I'm spending this amount of money on chasing, whether it's the Super Series, or is it just is there budgets for at the level you're at, or you just do what it takes?
No, absolutely. There's budgets. You want to be, in like I said with American Magic, you want to build a franchise, and you've got to have a budget because you're going to get the sponsors, and you got to be diligent for them about here's what we're going to spend, here's what we're going to do, and everybody has to be thinking through. Okay, here's what we want to achieve, and here's what it should cost to achieve that, and you just got to be realistic. And sometimes, sometimes the worst thing is an unlimited budget. Because then you try everything, you try all, every crazy idea known to man, and you don't make wise decisions early on to say, okay, I need to decide now whether we do this path or this path, and it's going to take you something. You may be right or wrong, but you're going to have to. It forces you to make decisions, and it's important to always have the cost and time, talent, and treasure. What's the cost of this going to be, and is that the right equation? Now, everyone has a different measure for, is this much money too much or not enough, or what, or whatever, but absolutely everything is budgeted. You're always looking at the budget. What's it going to cost to get to where we want to go? And that's a factor, in success as well.
In doing our series, I think one of the things we've figured out is that the reason sailors are so active and, more importantly, passionate and maybe zealot about the process is that this is one of the few sports where you can be state, international, national champion, North American champion at an elevated age of 50 or 60.
Yeah.
And the point to that is that if you play golf, that's not true. If you play most other recreational sports, that's just not the case. And guys that are sailing in the summer in the great, in the Midwest don't really do much but get involved in some kind of sailing activity. It might be ice boating.
Yeah.
And it's really if they sail, they very rarely do much else because it's so obsessive of that. And I think that gets lost on the general public, somebody who might be a more multi-sport, weekend warrior. And I think that's the part that gets lost in that translation. And I think that's part of the game that makes it unique. My couple last questions.
Sure.
When you go out to sail, when I go out on my boat and I get on it, and it's the same thing for coming down a ski hill. If I had a problem during the day and I'm 20 minutes out on the boat, I don't even remember where I came from. It's just that sort of, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't have any of those terrible habits, never have. And I come back from bad practice or something, coaching kids, and 4 of them frustrated me. And I get on a sailboat, and within 20 minutes, I'm fine. Is sailing the same thing for you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everything kind of gets left at the dock, and you get a chance because first of all, you got to pay attention to it, right? you got to go out there and pay attention to it, or else you'll have other problems that you got to worry about. But it allows you to just kind of leave a few things behind, and it allows you maybe to get yourself in the right frame of mind to think about those things, to reflect on them, and to kind of find a place, of peace, if you will, or a place where you can just reflect, with the pressure a little lower. So I find it in the exact same way.
I asked that because Eric Weinsman from Usual Suspects,
Yes.
he's got his 52 at the dock. He doesn't even take it out of the water.
Yeah.
He's using it like a beer can race boat for the summer.
Yeah.
And it's all family. I mean, it's an extraordinary way to use that boat in its context. I know you're part of the Makatawa family.
Yeah.
So it's, he's got to have a decided advantage on whatever night they run beer can racing.
Yeah, but he did it the same way. I've known Eric for years. He's just a wonderful guy, and his family's fantastic. This is what they do together. And how many sports can you do that? Different ages, parents, kids,
right.
Sons, daughters, all get on the boat. They go sailing. You can do that in our sport. It's pretty amazing.
Last question. You started a blog and a video blog called Believe.
Yes. Yeah.
And I've watched a number of them, and I guess I'm surprised at the landscape of folks you've talked to, because it's from every walk of life, and it's from every, it's athletes, it's business people, it's academic folk. Yeah. What got you to push that, and what was the idea?
So it's a podcast we called Believe, and I think my kids, told me to do it because they wanted, they were sick of me talking to them all the time. They said, why don't you talk to some other people? And so it's been it's been a great experience, but it just tried to find people and issues that are important in the world today, and find some experts to share their beliefs, how they got there. And so we can kind of share our, understand our own. And it was like we talked about, this is our passion for sailing. So this is our belief. This is what we believe about the sport and why it's good and why we want to share it with others. Well, that comes from a range of things, of being a citizen, of, standing up for your beliefs or your faith or whatever it is. And so we just try to explore that with people who have, who have tremendous experience or, have personal stories or a level of expertise that we can all learn from, and just kind of get them to talk about it a little bit and explore those things. So by listening to that, we can challenge ourselves, or what do I believe and why do I believe that? And so it's been a fun experience to do that. So thanks for listening.
Yeah, no, I took over our junior sailing program at Crescent, and I thought, as an old newspaper guy, I was going to bring some publicity, because that's the only thing. I don't have any junior sailing background at all. And so we'd thought we'd videotape the kids on Wednesday when they race, and then put their things up on Wednesday afternoon with the results across the bottom. Yeah. And then all of a sudden everybody started doing it. And then we had a conversation about maybe some interviews. Somebody said, well, you don't know anybody. So our first 4 interviews were Dennis Conner, Peter Eisler. We had some serious guys. Now 90 shows later.
That's a pretty good start.
Well, but 3 years later, we've done 90 shows, and it's just because this thing's growing out of out of literally nowhere. It's me and a computer. Now I'm talking to Doug DeVos. I mean, it's extraordinary, but what's really cool about it is you're able to have real conversations about the sport and see the insight. And one of the things I noticed at SailGP was the farther up I go in the sport, the more collaborative the sports become. Yet when I go back to a beer can race at my own club on a Wednesday, I got two guys fighting over a hot dog because somebody ran them off the starting line. And I understand the competitiveness of Weekend Warriors, but it's amazing at your level and certainly the SailGP. They want the best racer on the course. They don't necessarily want the best boat, which is the whole point of one design, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's the IROC, and sharing all that information is extraordinary.
Yeah, and having respect for everybody's skills, and you're all going to have good days and bad days. You just hope you can put enough together, together enough good days to win a regatta from time to time, but you have a lot of respect for folks, and that's what every once in a while you may have a conflict on a Wednesday night, but usually I see everybody back at the club afterwards telling stories, and that's what that's what we should be shooting for. We should be telling stories, and if we make a mistake, just apologize. Hey, my fault. I was wrong. I shouldn't have done it. I'm sorry. I won't do it again. I'll learn from it. We'll figure it out next time. Because all of us make mistakes.
Absolutely.
And life's too short, and the sport is too much fun to let conflict divide us.
Barcelona comes up 3 weeks.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I can't tell you how much I've appreciated this conversation. It's been terrific. I had the conversation with my cousin Craig DeRoche, who you know and have spent some time with. So I had to get the name in because Craig said you got to at least say hello to him for me. So I did that. He said at the end of the show, Craig was the former speaker, and he was involved in some prison reform as you were in 2019. So I just think it's remarkable what you've done with Quantum. We're actually going to, you notice I got the hat that I spent my money on. So we'll have a couple Quantum sales on the boat next year because I think we believe in the product because of the way it was sold. And Doug, I can't tell you how much I appreciate the time, and good luck in Barcelona for sure.
Great. Thanks, Greg. Thanks so much. Great to talk to you. Always fun to connect like this. That's for sure.
I just wanted to take time to thank Doug and all the folks at Quantum for spending the time with us over the last few months, and Terry Hutchinson and Matt Cassidy, Ed Reynolds. It's been very enjoyable being able to interview them, and then to talk to Doug has been a real treat. So there's a lot of work that gets done behind the scenes that very few people see, and I think that's something that's a testament to Doug's reputation and certainly his character. So for all the folks in back, we'll be back next week with the last show of season 3. And we appreciate you watching. I'm Greg Norman, your host, and we'll see you next week.